Okay guys, today we are going to begin area. You've actually already been doing this in projects, so this really should be a very quick review. So I'm going to go over a couple things that you need to know. I expect you to write them as I do, so pay attention and stay up. Alright, so we're going to first begin with, before you begin, you should have this little foldable here along with the star chart. And actually the star chart is just to kind of show you what it looks like on the reference star chart, but really you can just use this. But I want you to see it both because you will see it on star and you won't be able to use this foldable on star. So, let's begin. If you fold it, these are the different areas we're going to learn today. A rectangle you actually learned in 5th grade. Parallelogram, you have actually learned about a parallelogram too. And then triangle and trapezoid. Triangle and trapezoid should be pretty new to you, so really pay attention with those. So if you open it up, we're going to begin with a rectangle. And actually what we're going to begin with is a couple of things you need to know. So first is perimeter. You have actually already talked about perimeter, and just so you know, perimeter is the distance around the shape. So it's the distance around the shape. And the units for perimeter are regular units, like centimeters, inches, feet, yards. Okay? And then for area is the surface area. Okay, so that is the area. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So area is the size of the surface. Okay, so size of the surface. So kind of help you is how much would it take to cover the shape. So if I were going to paint something, how much would it take to cover it? And units for area are always squared. So, for example, centimeters squared, inches squared, feet squared, yards squared. Those are just some examples. And then you have volume. Volume is the inside of the shape. So how much does it take to fill the shape? Okay, and the units for that are in cube form. So like centimeters cubed, inches cubed, feet cubed, and so on. Okay, so let's start with parallelogram. Let's start with rectangle. And if you look, a rectangle, I'm sure you should know this by now, is base times height. You actually probably saw it as length times width. Okay, so you probably saw it as length times width, which is the same thing. So base times height. Our base is normally the bottom. Sometimes they'll have it turned around or sideways, but your base is always your longer side for a rectangle, and your height is what connects these two. So your height is your side, and if you know, your height is always going to form a 90-degree angle. So if you look, this kind of connects a 90-degree angle, because if you know anything about rectangles, they have 90-degree angles. Okay, so that's what you do. You have your area is your base times your height. And I highly recommend that you write that down, because sometimes when y'all just see base and the B and H, you don't understand. So I would right here write area equals base times height. Okay, and that's for area of a rectangle. So if I were to have a height of a 3 and base 2, I would do area equals 2 times 3. So my area, so my area would be 2 times 3, which is 6. So it would be 6, and then whatever our measurement was. Okay? Now, let's go down to parallelogram. Okay, parallelogram, if you notice, is the exact same formula. The only difference is, if you notice here, you have your height that is already part of your rectangle. And with a parallelogram, it's not. It's not always part of your parallelogram. So sometimes you have to draw it on the outside, or it'll be drawn for you, or you might have to do it on the inside, wherever they choose to draw it for you. Most of the time you don't have to draw it, but just in case you ever do, it's always going to be from your top to your base, okay? And you remember, it has to form a 90-degree angle. So, again, the base is your bottom, okay? And the height is from the top to the bottom, forming a 90-degree angle, okay? Again, it's the same thing, guys. It's area equals base times height. Okay, so again, if I were to have 3 as my base and 2 as my height, my area would be 3 times 2, so my area would be 6. Okay? If we're going to move down, we're going to move down to a triangle. So let's look at the triangle. There are numerous kinds of triangles, which you've learned by now. But the formula is half of base times height. Okay? There's several ways you can do this. If you have a calculator, you can just put the whole thing in your calculator. If you don't, you need to understand that you're going to take half of your base and then multiply it by your height. Or just understand that this is the same thing as this. Okay? Which is base times height divided by 2. And this is normally the way that I teach my kids. So they just understand they take their base and their height, which they're used to doing, and they divide it by 2. Okay? And the reason why is because if you have a rectangle is base times height. But if I draw a line across, that makes 2 triangles, which means that is half of my rectangle. That's where your half comes in. Okay? You should have learned that in your project time. If you didn't, that's fine, but just so you kind of know where the half comes from. So I'm going to write down how I solve this, okay, because this is the easiest way to remember to me. But if you'd like, this is the way you'll see it on the star chart, just in case you forget. Okay, but just know that you're always going to do area equals base times height divided by 2. Okay, so base times height divided by 2. Now, locating our bases is the key. So let's look at that. So here, if you look, remember I told you base is normally the bottom. But what you need to know is that the base and the height always come together to form a 90-degree angle. So if you look at this, this is a right triangle. So here's my base, here's my height, and the reason why it's this is because it forms a 90-degree angle right there. Okay? It can't be here because it can't form a 90-degree angle. So it has to be your base and your height make this 90-degree angle. Alright? Same thing here. If you have a regular triangle like this, your base is the bottom. Okay? And the reason why it's not over here or over here is because you remember it has to form a 90-degree angle. The only way that it could do that is coming from the top to the bottom and forming this 90 degree. And this actually, guys, what you see here is called perpendicular. Okay? And it's represented like this. That's perpendicular. That's a key word you might want to know. So, let's talk about how we would plug this in. So, if I had 4 here as my base and 3 here as my height. So according to my formula, I would do area equals my base, which is 4, times my height divided by 2. So my area is 4 times 3 is 12, divided by 2, so my area is 6. Okay, and it would be the same way there, guys. If my base was 4 and 3, you'd still do the same thing. Alright? So, now we've done rectangle, parallelogram, triangle, and now we're going to talk about a trapezoid. Okay? The things you need to understand about a trapezoid is this is the same thing. Okay? You would see it this way on star, but you remember I told you anytime you're doing this, this is just really dividing by 2. It's just half. It's half of that. So what you could do is this, or base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2. This is just half of what this is. That's all that it's saying. Okay? So you need to understand where your base 1 and base 2 are. They are labeled on here for you, but I need you to understand why they're these two and not these. And the reason why is because your bases will always be parallel. Well, let me show you the parallel symbol so you know. I don't want you to mess that up. So, well, here it's P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L, and the symbols go like this. Okay, that's a symbol for parallel. And the reason why it's not this one, okay, is let me show you why. If I were to extend this shape, because shapes can go on forever. If I were to extend this shape, you see eventually they're going to cross right there. Okay, so that's why it cannot be the sides here. It has to be these bases because these go parallel forever. Okay, so my height, again, comes from my top of my base to the bottom and forms a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to write out how you would say this. So what you would do is you would have your area equals base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2. Okay? So if my base 1 was 3 and 4 and 5, how we would do is we do area equals 3 plus 4 times 5 divided by 2. Well, 4 plus 3 is 7 times 5 divided by 2. So that would give me 35 divided by 2. And when you do that, top in, bottom out, 2 goes into 3 one time, and 2 goes into 15 7 times, which is 14, bring down 1. That can't work, so you add a 0 and a decimal, bring down your 0, and now we have area equals 17.5. Alright, perfect. Well, you should have some practice time. Sorry, guys. So, I highly recommend you practice before you take the common assessment or the content assessment because there is a lot of information on this one. So, I wish you the best of luck. Good luck.